Hey students, today we are going to cover the point of view in word choice practice checkpoint on the key and soy assignment. This was a lesson I taught during our last face-to-face week before we went to remote learning. And I wanted to go over this lesson as a review, especially with how much this checkpoint relates to your final products. Here I have a co-teacher here. This is Remy. There might be up to 3 cats that join us today in this lesson. So students, in this lesson today, we are going to go over this idea of point of view and how important it is to get multiple points of view when you are looking up anything about our history, about our modern media, and whenever you're trying to assess, I guess, any type of story, how important it is to get multiple perspectives to that story. Focusing on this point in history, we are talking about the Spanish colonization of Latin America. Specifically of the Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca, and the Tiano. Today we are going to talk about the Spanish colonization of the Aztecs. But in order to get started on this checkpoint, we are going to go over the rule of 3 and the importance of following the rule of 3 when looking up sources online, but also when looking up historical events. To go over, if you're looking for a base definition of the rule of 3, feel free to watch this video, replay this whenever you need to if you're looking for a base definition. So the rule of 3 means whenever you find something online, this can be a modern news source, this can be something that you're looking up in history, the rule of 3 is after you find something like that online, you find 2 other sources to try to back up what that first source is saying. Basically, it allows you to triple check to make sure that what you're finding online is accurate. And today we're going to go over why that's so important in our modern news and also why it is so important to also apply this rule whenever you're focusing on history. We're going to start by going to the Nearpod lesson. Students, this self-paced lesson can be found in the Perspective in Literature and Media checkpoint on the Summit Learning platform. To access this self-paced lesson, we're going to go to Nearpod. And to go over the rule of 3, we're going to start by looking over new news coverage today. If you need a refresher on the rule of 3 at any time, there is a wonderful video that you can find under your additional resources in Perspective in Literature and Media. And that video is called Detecting Lies and Staying True, Finding Accurate Information Online. It's a 2-minute video, and it is absolutely excellent. Students, one of the most challenging, one of the biggest challenges that we are currently facing, and it's something that's going to be defining for your generation, is how we can continue finding accurate information online when there is so much to be found online. How can you be sure that what you are reading or seeing is accurate, especially with the advent of deepfake videos where politicians can give a speech, where you'll watch a deepfake video of a politician giving a speech that politician never even gave. It was completely video edited, and it sounds absolutely realistic. And the problem is, when it comes to this, the technology is only getting better. It is going to get easier and easier and easier to make it sound like a person gave a speech that they've never given, to present fake information as if it were factual. And the challenge of your time is going to be making sure that what you're seeing and reading online is accurate. So I highly recommend you watching this video just to develop techniques so that what you're finding online is accurate. So when jumping back into this Nearpod lesson, we'll actually go over an example of this today. Now, we're going to be going into a New York Times article that talked about how different the impeachment coverage was for President Trump during fall of this year. Now, what this article is focusing on is not the news of the impeachment itself, or nothing really about the impeachment, but how different the impeachment was covered depending on the channel you were watching. I will read into this article. So this is an article from Michael Grinbaum of the New York Times. All right, so for a glimpse of the country's divided political reality, look no further than a pair of television studios on opposite sides of the Avenue of Americas in Midtown Manhattan. From her set inside of the MSNBC headquarters, Rachel Maddow opened her primetime coverage of the Trump impeachment hearings by calling the first day's testimony a double-barreled problem for the president, triple-barreled maybe. President Trump, she said, had been caught doing something illegal at the direct expense of the country's national interest. One block south from a Fox News studio, Sean Hannity welcomed viewers by declaring it a great day for the United States, for the country, and for the president, and a lousy day for the corrupt, do-nothing for 3 years, radical, extreme, socialist Democrats, and their top allies known as the media mob. These distinct visions, delivered simultaneously from skyscrapers roughly 1,000 feet apart, were beamed at the 9 p.m. hour into millions of American living rooms. It was a striking reflection of today's choose-your-own-news media environment, and a far cry from the era when Americans experienced major events through the same television hearth. So, students, this was the first part of the article right here. But just to add some context, depending on which channel you had on during the impeachment coverage, so if you had MSNBC on, what you would have heard was that the impeachment was terrible for President Trump. But if you had Fox News on, you would find that, according to Fox News and Sean Hannity, that impeachment was actually great for President Trump and terrible for the Democrats who had voted for impeachment in the House of Representatives. So, students, this illustrates why it is so important to find multiple sources whenever you're looking up something online. This is news coverage, news that Americans rely on to get their information about modern events. But the scary thing about this time is depending on what channel you had on, you were going to get a completely, the news itself was going to be completely different depending on the channel you had on. This is why the rule of three, finding 3 sources online for your information, is so incredibly important. Students, a great example of this, it also comes when researching history, which takes us to our summit learning assignment today, or our assignment that we are going to be doing on the Spanish and the Aztecs today. So, students, applying the rule of 3 not only to current news is important, but also applying it to our history is equally important. So, students, a good example would be some of the history that I learned through the online program that I used in my middle school, talked about the Spanish discovering what is now Latin America. They talked about how the Spanish hope to spread their religion to people all throughout Latin America to help people in Latin America. But what we find now, that I probably learned that about 14 years ago now, is that this history was not listening to the side of the story from the people who were already living in Latin America. For example, just saying that the Spanish discovered Latin America is incorrect. There were people already living there. So just that word choice was incorrect, and that word choice wasn't listening to the side of the story from the folks in Latin America. And so today in this unit, in this first part of this unit, we are going to be listening to that other side, specifically from the point of view of the Aztecs. So, and in this unit, I want you constantly thinking about the different points of view who were involved in the Spanish colonization of what they called the New World, of what's modern day Latin America in from what we're focusing on on in this project. So in order to get started with this first assignment, you're going to click on point of view and word choice practice. Now, if at any point you are feeling lost and you're not sure, or you get confused on the timeline and what exactly happened between the Spanish and the Aztecs, here is, if you go to checkpoint number 1, there is an Aztec civilization timeline right here. And if you click on this timeline, it gives you a complete timeline of the fall of the Aztec Empire. And I encourage you to, at any time, if you are in this unit and you're not sure about some details, please refer to this timeline at any time in this unit. For your checkpoint number 1, what you are going to focus on is working on the point of view and word choice practice. Specifically, we are going to be reading an account from a Spanish priest who went to Mexico to convert all of the Aztecs to the Catholic Church. Now, the Aztecs, when the Spanish talked about colonizing the Aztecs, they often talked about the reason that they were doing it. They would put really racist language and say that the Aztecs were savages, and really focus on the fact that the Aztecs committed human sacrifices. But when they said this, they only were presenting a very narrow view of the Aztec civilization. And the Spanish weren't talking about how the Aztecs were incredibly ahead of their time in their education, how they tried to educate their entire population, including young women and including slaves who were in their population. They didn't mention the Aztecs' advanced farming techniques that they had. Farming techniques that we are actually looking into today, chinampas, we are actually researching today to see if that can help feed our growing population around the world. There are estimates that we will have 9 billion people on our planet in 2050. So figuring out solutions on how to make sure that we can feed this population, this growing population on our planet is so important. But the Spanish did not focus on this part of the Aztec civilization. They only talked about how the Aztecs needed to be saved. So we're going to read an account from a Spanish priest that kind of presents a different story here. So this was the festival of Toxcatl, and I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation, and talks about what the Spanish did at this festival. So for some context about this festival, this was the name of the 5th 20-day month of the Aztec calendar, and the festival itself lasted from May 5th to May 22nd. It was a major festival and holiday in the Aztec religion. And something that was really important about this festival is that the Spanish were invited as guests. But what the Aztecs had no idea is that the Spanish had an entirely sinister plan for this festival. I will read through the primary source here in checkpoint 1. All right, this is from the Spanish priest Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, and this is the priest that went to Mexico and observed what happened at this festival. Here it is how the Spaniards killed and they murdered the Mexicas who were celebrating the fiesta of the Huitzzilopochtli in the place that they called the Patio of the Gods. At this time, when everyone was enjoying the fiesta, when everyone was already dancing, when everyone was already singing, when song was linked to song and the songs roared like waves, in that precise moment, the Spaniards were determined to kill people. They came into the patio armed for battle. They came to close the exits, the steps, the entrances, the gate of the eagle in the smallest palace, the gate of the canestalk, and the gate of the snake of mirrors. When they had closed them, no one could get out of the festival. Once they had done this, the Spanish entered the sacred patio to kill people. They came on foot, carrying swords and wooden and metal shields. Immediately, they surrounded those who danced. They rushed to the place where the drums were played, and they attacked the man who was drumming and killed him. At that moment, they then attacked all of the people, stabbing them, spearing them, wounding them from their swords. They struck some from behind, who fell instantly to the ground. Some tried to escape, but the Spaniards murdered them at the gates while they laughed. So, students, today we're going to be answering these questions. This came from someone who was from Spain, someone who came, a priest who came with the belief that he was going to help convert people, that this was a mission to convert people to Catholicism, and he saw something completely different. And there were some people on the Spanish side, like this priest, who said that while the Spanish was telling everyone that they had to convert everyone to Catholicism because people were savages, they would come and some, like this priest, said that the savage acts they were observing were coming from the Spanish. Just in this example, the Spanish were invited to a party and ended up murdering everyone at this party. And so, in this assignment, students, this is the first time I want you exploring multiple points of view here and understanding that it is so important to get multiple perspectives whenever we're looking at a story in today's media or whenever we're looking at a story in history. Now, I've had some students in class who were asking, they were like, well, were the Spanish lying about the sacrifices? No, the Spanish were not lying about that. And it's a great thing that so many of our modern civilizations have moved away from the horrific practice of human sacrifice. But the important part of that story is that that was only a piece of the Aztec story. And for such a long time, even when I was doing online learning when I was in 6th grade, I only learned the Spanish side of the story. I did not learn anything else about the Aztecs. And because of that, in this unit, you are going to start exploring other sides of the story, other points of view, and try to get a more complete sense for the complete stories in our history. Now, an important thing about history is that it will constantly change. We're constantly going to unearth new documents that have new sides of the story that we haven't considered before. But the important thing about history is that you keep looking, keep following the rule of 3. Always try to get as many perspectives as possible and as many sides of the story. All right, students, turn in checkpoint 1 when you have a chance. Get your assignment turned in. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email. And thank you so much for your time today.